Joining us now is Democratic Congressman André Carson of Indiana. He's on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning.
What do you want to see happen next with the investigation into the Trump team and Russia ties?
Well, I think that both the Senate and House Intelligence Committees, as well as both Armed Services Committees and other committees of jurisdiction, are doing a great job at asking the right questions and unearthing truths that are necessary to get to the bottom of this. I don't think it's out of the question to get a special prosecutor. In fact, a special prosecutor would even protect the president, dare I say. You want to make sure that partisanship or ulterior motives are not at play, but in fact both committees do well in terms of partisanship, and so this pushback on having a special prosecutor should not be one filled with anxiety. It should be one that's hopeful and reflective of our democratic values.
But Congressman, do you believe that the chairman of the House Intel Committee, Devin Nunes, and the Senate Intel Committee, Richard Burr, can adequately and independently investigate these Russia ties when they were both sort of lobbied by the White House to speak out to reporters that they basically don't think there's anything there? How can they move forward independently when we know that they already are inclined to believe the White House?
Well, the short answer is yes. I think both chairmen do a great job on both committees in terms of allowing Democrats to have a voice. It's probably both committees are probably two of the most bipartisan committees in both the House and the Senate. Let me be very clear. However, if we want to have our due diligence and if we want to protect the president, if you will, I don't think a special prosecutor is out of the question. In fact, if he's concerned, President Trump is concerned about Democrats undermining his efforts, if Democrats are concerned about Republicans protecting the president, then perhaps we should talk more about bringing a special prosecutor in to ensure that we have an independent and objective voice.
So is that what you're calling for?
It's not out of the question for me. I think both committees are doing a fantastic job at this point, but if things get deeper and murkier, then absolutely.
What questions do you still have about these ties?
I'm concerned about the conversations that General Flynn had with the Russian ambassador. I'm concerned about Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, and his interactions with the Russian government. I'm also concerned about Russian interference into the elections, what directives were coming out of the Kremlin. And so I think that as we move forward, we can unearth these answers from our agency heads of NSA, FBI, and also other sources that we're getting, anonymous sources and sources that are pretty pronounced, to see what's really at play. I think in order to protect our democracy, the founding fathers were very visionary in establishing three separate branches of government.
When will you see the transcripts of those phone calls that existed between Mike Flynn and the Russia ambassador?
Hopefully soon.
But no timeline on that?
Hopefully soon.
I want to ask you about the sneak peek that Joe Johns just gave us of the budget proposals that we understand, at least the headlines of them, will be coming out of the White House. Here's what we understand the president will be calling for: a significant military spending increase, tax cuts, as we know they're looking at for at least the wealthy, but everybody, President Trump has suggested, no change to Social Security and Medicare, and then some cuts to some agencies such as the EPA. What will Democrats' reaction be to this?
Well, a budget is a statement of values. If President Trump is proposing to increase our military spending, cut taxes for the wealthy, cut the budget for the EPA, we're seeing crazy climate shifts right now and weather shifts in the Midwest and on the East Coast. That concerns me. If he's talking about maintaining Social Security, that's good, but it's not great because those folks who receive Social Security have yet to receive a cost of living adjustment. And so Democrats like myself and others will be pushing President Trump to not fall into the rhetoric of imposing some European-style austerity measure that my Republican colleagues are pushing, but to make sure we're having the right investments in infrastructure. We're making sure that we're putting Americans back to work. We're investing investing in our educational system, and I think he should have a greater vision about some of these trade proposals and trade deals, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say tomorrow about all of these things.
But Congressman, do you understand how the math works with a significant increase in military spending, as well as what you say and what the president has promised in terms of infrastructure, yet tax cuts? How does it work?
Well, I'm not an economist, but I can say this. I think that the American people see the United States of America as being overly weaponized, and our investment of taxpayer dollars into the military-industrial complex is arguably excessive. That does not mean that we should not be ready in case of an attack or in case we need to bolster our presence globally, but it does speak to our values, as I said in the very beginning. Using taxpayer dollars to invest heavily in our military apparatus is not necessarily smart. We're the mightiest nation in recorded history. Let's look at very wisely using a series of capital infusions across the country, in states, in cities, where we can generate economic growth and put Americans back to work.
Okay, Congressman André Carson, thank you very much for sharing all of the latest on Capitol Hill. Chris.
All right, speaking of the Trump administration.